So the environment we will be building, are you guys paying attention?
Yeah.
The environment we will be building is going to consist of a hypervisor, right? You guys, how many of you guys did the quiz? Homework 1 quiz? Yeah, you should know what a hypervisor is then, right? So we have, this is our hardware actual box. Instead of installing Windows or whatever, we install our hypervisor. Actually, let me start over. Let me put the hardware at the bottom. Hardware at the bottom. Then we have the hypervisor, which in this case we're using ESXi 5.5, right? And then on top of the hypervisor, you have a bunch of virtual machines running, right? That's the simplest case of virtualization. With this very simple case, the first thing we're going to do is set that up, and then you can connect it with the Vsphere. That's not how you spell sphere. Vsphere client, right? So one of the first things we're going to do is download the Vsphere client from the hypervisor on your Windows machine. It is an actual software client you can use to manage it. It'll connect to it, and you can manage stuff on this one particular hypervisor, right? This is cool. This is great if you're doing simple things. You know, like in my labs, I have a bunch of virtual machines that we use for some different things, like on the RichNet for the CNT 220 project. I don't know why I'm still doing this with my hand. I'm going to stop now. So this is good. In the real world, this is not sufficient because if this piece of hardware dies, you're messed up, right? If all these machines get super busy, you have nowhere to go. So in the real world, we add another thing to the picture called the vCenter server. Right? So that's the second thing our labs can have us install. Now, with this view, your vCenter server connects to the hypervisor. Your client connects to the vCenter server. Now you manage everything through the vCenter server, and the hypervisor becomes this abstract idea that when it's the only thing we have, it's very important. But in this view, we're going to have multiple hypervisors, right? So I'm going to erase this hypervisor and draw them a bunch smaller. In theory, we're going to have a bunch of hypervisors with the VMs on it. Right, and we're going to manage all those through vCenter server. We'll make our configurations here, and the vCenter server will push them down to the hypervisor. We can create our VMs in the vCenter server and just select which hypervisor we want it to run on. Brian?
Is that more effective or more efficient than running a hypervisor on top of the cluster configuration?
We will create clusters in here that will join hypervisors together to form a cluster.
Okay.
Does that answer the question?
Yes and no.
Okay,
That's fine.
we'll figure it out later.
That's fine.
So now we have multiple hypervisors. So in theory, we can say, hey, you know, for this VM, if this hypervisor dies, automatically move it over to one of the other hypervisors. Or we can even say things like, oh, hey, if the CPU usage on this guy gets to be too high, move some of the VMs off to the other side and make the CPU over here go down. So this gives us a lot of flexibility in moving our machines around to different hypervisors, so we're not tied to one piece of hardware, right? Some problems with that: one, you need to have compatible hypervisors. So if this machine has 1,000 gigs of RAM, and this one has 2 gigs of RAM, and a crappy processor, and this has an awesome processor, you're not going to be able to move stuff around as easily. The third part of what we're going to need to make all this cool stuff work, we need shared storage. So we use the vCenter server to manage our VMs to move them around the hypervisors. Well, we need some sort of network attached storage because if this VM lives on the disk that's on this hypervisor, moving it over here is not feasible without first moving the disk over, and we don't want to be constantly moving the disks around across the network.
How much storage should you have? Is a good number for that?
It depends on how many VMs you're going to be running, right? If you have actual real live server VMs that are like, you know, your file server or something that has a 6 terabyte disk, then you're going to need 6 terabytes just for that drive. I don't know if anybody uses file servers like that. I don't know. I've never messed with file servers. But if you're just running like a web server that's like a 50 gig disk, then you need 50 gigs. So you need the aggregate of all the virtual machines you're going to be running on there. So once you get to this configuration, you can actually set things up so that your hypervisors boot from the network. You don't even have the hypervisor software installed on it. You know, the thing dies, you don't care, you just stick another piece of hardware in there and throw that one in the trash, you know. Imagine that when you only have one hypervisor with everything you're running on it. If it dies, you're going to spend some nights crying, you know, because everything's gone, especially if you haven't made like snapshots and saved them all somewhere else and whatnot. So this is our desired state where we're going to end up. In theory, hopefully, by the time we finish the VMware part, each student will have their own vCenter server, 2 hypervisors that are connected to shared storage. So you can do all the cool stuff that the book says we should be able to do. I'm working ahead. I'm only to chapter 4, so hopefully I'll get done with chapter 4 and 5 next week, so I'll know everything will work for you guys. Vsphere hard client, right? You can connect to your ESXi box with the hard client, manage it directly. We'll do a little bit of that to start out, but most of our config will be in the vCenter server. There's also a web client with 5.5, actually with 5.1, they've stopped developing the software client, and they want everybody to use the web client. So if you're using any new features that came out since 5.1, you have to use the web client. So we'll use the vSphere client a little bit just to see how it works, but most of our stuff will be done in the web client. It has seemed to work okay so far for me. I don't know. I don't want to say I'm not a huge fan of web interfaces, but last semester when I was trying to use the web client, it was just super slow and didn't work real well. But that might have been a side effect of my vCenter server was not really running on very good hardware. This semester, our vCenter server is running somewhere else, so hopefully we get to work. So this is our end state for what we're trying to accomplish. I'm going to stop this and start it up.